rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events, this is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and happy Veterans Day. Well, I don't know if you necessarily call it happy or, but still, happy Veterans Day. Thank you to all of the veterans who are out there tonight. We owe everything to you, and also to those who never came home. But this is Veterans Day. Veterans Day is all about you. Memorial Day is for those that we have lost, okay? But Veterans Day is all about veterans, those that have served their time and have come home, regardless of how they came home, but have come home and are currently doing other things in the world because of their choice to leave the service. I, too, am a veteran, although I am going to admit that I have a difficulty at times necessarily accepting thanks. Believe me, my heartfelt thank you to all of you who recognize all of us. But the thing about it is that when you serve in the armed forces and you serve during peacetime, it mainly just feels like just a job. That's all it is a job. There's nothing really necessarily special per se. However, for those that feel that way, I have something that I'm going to read to you that may change your mind. It may change your mind. And I will explain here in just a moment. Let me go ahead and get the Pledge of Allegiance going because, that is the first thing that we do. So tonight's Pledge of Allegiance is being led by Definitely Not Karen. That is, Definitely Not Karen from Rumble is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So please, if you are of mine, stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, and if not, or even if you are, place your hand over your heart. And let's follow along with Definitely Not Karen in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Definitely Not Karen, for putting that in. I do appreciate that. If you would like to hear your version of the Pledge of Allegiance here on the program, definitely take some time, recite the pledge in your style, and make sure that you take that audio file and attach it to an email. Send it off to me at fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. All right, guys, so I put up a new video behind me for that, and I just got to ask really quickly, is the fireplace sounds a little too loud? I mean, is my voice coming through well enough? Or should I maybe tweak that a little bit? Should I bring that down a little bit? Let me know. Oh, the fire is too loud. Okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead and make that change. Stand by for just a second here. Let me see. Oh, wait. What is going on here? There it is. Okay, so the fire is a little too loud. How's about that? Is that better? Yeah. All right. There we go. How about that? Is that better? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Are we good? Lower a hair. Okay. Let's go a little bit lower. How about like that? How's that? Is that better? Just give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. Tell me better, not better, whatever. Okay, I got a thumbs up. At least one. All right, so there we go. Okay, let's I want to make sure that I get back in. All right. Okay, now we're good. All right, sorry about that. I was playing around and I didn't realize how loud it was, because I like the sounds, but I want to make sure that it doesn't cover me up, obviously. Okay. So first things first, let me go ahead and tell you about TGRN, because that's tonight's headliner pro bono. TGRN.net, True Grit Roots Network. TGRN.net is our location on the interwebs. You can go there and play our station directly through your browser. Or if you want to carry us along with you during your day, you can either download our app, which is available both in iOS and Android, or you can also find us on the Live 365, the Odyssey, AUDACY, or the iHeartRadio app, and search us up out of their catalog of digital radio stations. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, nothing has changed so far. I still have Jonathan Oogie Richards. He's going to join me Wednesday, because Wednesday, of course, is TGRN Day. And so Wednesday, he's going to join me for an exclusive interview right here live on American Perspective. And so make sure you tune in for that. I'm going to try and get him in first things first on the evening. And that way, I got to be able to respect his time, because he is a very, very busy man. And I do appreciate him for taking some time out to come and talk to us. But anyway, don't forget to miss that, don't miss that on Wednesday. Don't forget to be there so that he can be there, and we can go from there. And yes, Wednesday is pantless and braless night, according to Bonnie over on Rumble. I won't let him know for that. So anyway, head on over to TGRN and get your get your blues. TGRN Blues is the channel that we have right now, but I know that Jonathan's got an announcement that he wants to talk about on Wednesday about some things that are coming into the station. So you're going to want to be there to listen to all of that. Go to TGRN.net. TGRN Blues stands for True Grit Roots Network, based out of Austin, Texas. All right. So, first things first, folks. I told you about about our veterans, and I got to tell you, like I said, I know that there's a bunch of veterans that are out there that feel similarly to me, to where when somebody comes up and finds out that you're a veteran or whatever. I mean, every once in a while I'll wear things that identify me as a veteran. And every once in a while, I might, use like my VA card or something like that, to get a discount or two here and there. But for the most part, somebody coming up to me and saying, thank you for your service feels a little weird, because I never served in combat. Okay. And there is a huge distinction. I'm telling you, even within the services, there is a level of respect that those that have not served in combat give to those that have served in combat. So, for an example, if I were to ever be in a conversation with, say, Sean Parnell, who spent, many months in combat in Afghanistan, in one of the hottest quadrants of Afghanistan, I'm going to be deferential to him. Not to mention the fact that I was enlisted, he was an officer. So that just comes and is born from the service itself. So if he and I were actually to get together and talk, again, he would gain the deferential treatment. And the reason being, of course, is because of the fact that he, one, is an officer, but even more so the fact that he served in combat and was actually wounded in combat a couple different times. So that being said, though, we need to understand that, as I've already pointed out, Becky at Facebook says, when are you going to have him on? You know, I keep trying, and we just can't seem to get our schedules to line up. I may try. You know what? Now that I think about it, I've got some vacation time coming up from my regular job that I do during the day, so I may try and get him. I think actually that may be a good idea. I may try and get him right before Thanksgiving if I can, or potentially during the Christmas New Year 2-week time frame. I'm going to see if I can get a hold of him and get him on, because that would be awesome. So, but anyway, as I was saying, there's a certain level of understanding that whenever you go into the service, you know, you have, and the saying goes is that you have signed a check payable up to and including your life. And it is so true. Whether or not the U.S. government actually has cashed that check or not, you still signed on the dotted line. You still signed there. You made a pledge. You made a pledge and an oath. And, you know, for me, my oath has never expired. I may have left the service, but my oath has never expired, and it won't expire. And for that oath, that is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, which is right here. We did it. We defended the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And I get frustrated when I see veterans who are out there who are talking about things like Donald Trump, you know, being a threat to the Constitution when he is no such thing. When the Democrats themselves are the most threat to the Constitution in terms of domestically, as far as that goes. But I want to read you something. Now, the original author of this is unknown, okay? However, it was posted by a gentleman by the name of Buzz Patterson. And you may recognize that name because he is he's a author, a pilot, a former carrier of the nuclear football. He is currently a columnist at Red State. And and he's been a twice best-selling New York Times author as well. So he also does speaking and media engagements too. But he posted this on X, and I want to read this to you, and maybe you'll feel a little differently after you get done with this. To understand a military veteran, you must know: we left home as teenagers in our early 20s for an unknown adventure. We loved our country enough to defend it and protect it with our own lives. We said goodbye to friends and family and everything that we knew. We learned the basics, and then we scattered to the wind to the far corners of the earth. We found new friends and new family. We became brothers and sisters regardless of color, race, or creed. We had plenty of good times and plenty of bad times. We didn't get enough sleep. We drank too much. We picked up both good and bad habits. We worked hard and played harder. We didn't earn a great wage. We experienced the happiness of mail call and the sadness of missing important events. We didn't know when or even if we were ever going to see home again. We grew up fast, and yet somehow we never grew up at all. We fought for our freedom as well as the freedom of others. Some of us saw actual combat, and some of us didn't. Some of us saw the world, and some of us didn't. Excuse me. Some of us dealt with physical warfare. Most of us dealt with psychological warfare. We have seen and experienced and dealt with things that we cannot fully describe or explain, as not all of our sacrifices were physical. We participated in time-honored ceremonies and rituals with each other, strengthening our bonds and camaraderie. We counted on each other to get our job done and sometimes to survive at all. We have dealt with victory and tragedy. We have celebrated and mourned. We lost a few along the way. When our adventure was over, some of us went back home, some of us started somewhere new, and some of us never came home at all. We have told amazing and hilarious stories of our exploits and adventures. We share an unspoken bond with each other that most people don't experience and few will understand. We speak highly of our own branch of service and poke fun at the other branches. We know, however, that if needed, we will be there for our brothers and sisters and stand together as one in a heartbeat. Being a veteran is something that had to be earned, and it can never be taken away. It has no monetary value, but at the same time, it is a priceless gift. People see a veteran and they thank them for their service. When we see each other, we give that little upwards nod or a slight smile, knowing that we have shared and experienced things most people have not. So, from myself to the rest of the veterans out there, I commend and thank you for all that you have done and sacrificed for your country. Try to remember the good times and make peace with the bad times. Share your stories, but most importantly, stand tall and proud, for you have earned the right to be called a veteran. I don't know. Did that make anybody think a little bit differently? I mean, I can tell you when going through and reading that list of stuff, I can tell you for a fact I did drink too heavily. Yep. And it is funny. It is funny to sit there and look at other people. In fact, just to give you a quick story, I was with my wife, Mrs. Whiskey, and we were walking through Walmart nearby here. We had picked up some stuff. And as we were going out the door, there was an old gentleman who wore a Navy hat. You've seen my Army hat. I'm not wearing it now, but you've seen my Army hat there. And yeah, I was wearing it. And he looked at me and I looked at him, and believe me, there was probably, I'm going to guess, a generation between us, meaning 20 years between us. But still, it was as though he and I were in there, in there together at the same time, even though we were at least 20 years apart. He nodded to me, I nodded to him, and he kind of made a joke about me being in the Army, and I, of course, told him thank you for your service, and then followed along with fair winds and following seas, which is the Navy's way of saying, good luck or whatever. It's sort of like saying Semper Fidelis to a Marine. All right. But here's the thing. There's a lot of stuff that goes on being a veteran that you don't really think about. And me, I'm close to like 30 years beyond when I got out. In fact, I got out in 1994, which would have been 30 years, come to think about it. I am not in contact with any of my fellow soldiers at all. But still, it doesn't matter. There's still a camaraderie there. There's still a respect that's there. There's still an understanding when you run across somebody. And even with the new ones, like you see those that are in right now, there's something there that you can see. You can see what is going on in that individual's mind. And I've tried a couple times. I mean, I try when I see him when I would see him in the airport or in public. You know, I would go up and thank him from one veteran to another service person. I would thank them for their contribution and their courage and their time. And yeah. So anyway, if you get the opportunity to thank a veteran, make sure that you do so, because there's a lot of things that we wouldn't have today if it weren't for the fact that the veterans of our country and many other countries around the world hadn't have stood up and took their respective oaths and gone off to war to go fight. So thank you to all of your veterans, and we appreciate every single one of you. All right, folks, let's go ahead and we'll move on to tonight's regularly scheduled program. So the election is not over, and I say that only because of the fact that they're still counting. They're still counting votes. They're still counting votes. Anyway, the biggest thing is not so much the Senate. We're pretty well taken care of, although Pennsylvania seems to be the outlier. The Senate race over there is, it's just, they're just dragging it on. And actually, I hear that there might even be some like legal challenges or something going on with that. Personally, I think it's a bunch of crap, but whatever. Mark Elias, the scumbag Democrat shyster lawyer, and no, I don't mean to necessarily be degrading on that, but he is definitely a slippery individual. But he is saying that he's been saying on X that he's going to mount some sort of a legal thing against that race for whatever reason. But the House of Representatives, the race to the majority tightens with Republicans inching closer. The last I looked, they had 216 confirmed seats. They need 218 in order to claim a majority. And of the outstanding seats, 3 of them are potential, like, not flips, but 2 of them, I believe, if I recall correctly, looking at it, 2 of them are vacated seats that, each the Republicans and the Democrats had a opportunity to have an opportunity to take. But one in particular, the one in Alaska, that one is potentially a flipper. So provided, and again, keep in mind, provided that things stay the way that they currently are, you will probably see the Republicans taking control of the House of Representatives, although it will be a thin majority for that, I can tell you. Now, Speaker Johnson is fairly certain that we're going to retake the House because he's already relaunched his bid to become Speaker for this next session. And so, yeah, we're just going to have to kind of see what happens here. But he feels fairly confident, I think, that we are going to remain in control of the House of Representatives, which, again, would give us basically the presidency and both houses of Congress and ties us together. So, yeah, that's kind of the case. And we're still going to be waiting to kind of see. But also, too, keep in mind that a lot of people, especially those on the social medias, have been floating all kinds of weird conspiracy theories. For an example, there's been conversations and posts that have been talking about Starlink and how Starlink counted the votes. I don't know how. Starlink is an internet access technology. There's no counting of the votes. I don't know where they get that. And then there's other ones that are starting to come back now where they're starting to say, hey, my vote actually wasn't even counted. I mean, it was accepted. It had the signature, but then it wasn't counted. And then, then you also have, there was an article that I saw right before coming on the air that was talking about a mix-up in mail-in balloting or something along those lines where the Postal Service screwed up. Well, I hate to say it, liberals, leftists, because I hate calling them liberals, because a true, like, traditional liberal would be for freedom and liberty, not against freedom and liberty. But, I'm sorry to say this, leftist, but you should have expected it. The U.S. Postal Service told you weeks before the election that there was a likelihood of this happening. Why in the hell do you think that conservatives have been trying to tell you over and over and over again that we need to get rid of mail-in balloting, that it needs to be in-person voting only? Because there's no way, once you take that ballot and you drop it in the mail, I mean, come on, there's thousands of pieces of mail that get lost every single day. And so you're sitting here and you're barking up the wrong tree. You're talking to the wrong people. The other thing that they seem to be considerably looking at is the fact that they are trying to get Kamala Harris to potentially do a recount. Now, I've heard, and I can't confirm this, but I've heard that there is potentially a third party. There is potentially a third party who is bringing in money in order to be able to pay for these recounts. Now, I don't know how she is necessarily going to pay for it. She still owes $20 million to the DNC, apparently. But, I mean, hey, whatever. You guys go ahead, do whatever you're going to do. I can almost certainly guarantee you they're going to end up in the same location and the same spot that we were in 2020, which is essentially that the courts aren't going to want anything to do with it. They're going to say that there is no standing. They're going to say that the elections, laws were followed. They're going to say that there's nothing going on with the cases. They're going to dismiss all of them. Bring as many as you want. I mean, I don't think the courts have any iota of desire to get involved with this, especially when it seems to have been such a blowout. So, hey, go ahead. I mean, seriously, go ahead. I would like you to find a way to open things up, because it would be great to go back and relitigate 2020. Because that's the other claim that all of these leftist morons have been making, which is that where's, 10 to 15 million, Democrat voters? There's one plausible explanation. They were manufactured. How about that? Especially because of the fact that they're sitting there talking about how Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Yeah. Anyway, the point being here is, go ahead. Just, I'm saying it, I'm inviting it, because what this will do is this keeps pushing the premise that mail-in voting is subjected to fraud. Whether it's Democrat fraud, Republican fraud, neither fraud, it doesn't matter. Whether it's dead people voting, non-citizens voting, all of this stuff just indicates that the system itself is broken. And the only way, the real way to fix it, is to go to paper ballots, in-person voting, potentially even going down to in-person day of voting, and, of course, confirming voter ID. And, again, like Landon's mom, or Bonnie, over on Rumble says, do they really want to open that can of worms? Apparently they do. I mean, they're looking for it to happen. They're trying to come up with any way, shape, or form that they can stay in power. That's literally what they're looking for. And, honestly, I think it's going to fall flat on its face, no matter what they do. It's all going to be over with, as far as that goes. So, whatever, go ahead. I mean, nothing to stop you. I certainly can't stop you. And it is your right to challenge the election, regardless of what you said about 2020 and 2022. You can challenge it. Go for it. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but hey, new rules. You challenge an election and you go to court and you have evidence, but you don't even get there because your standing is cut out from under you. Yeah, that's the new rules. So go ahead. Go for it. Well, we have now a little bit more information about what was happening when Joe Biden was summarily shoved off the cliff by the Democrats and had Kamala Harris installed in his place for the presidency. So this in Woke Spy, let me go ahead and show you this. So this in Woke Spy, a former Obama speechwriter who goes by the name of John Favreau apparently was discussing something on a podcast here not too long ago. Oh, Pod Save America podcast. That internal polls had a Biden defeat with Trump garnering over 400 electronic votes. Okay? 400 electoral college votes. I said electronic. I meant electoral college. Well, electoral votes. And a wipeout of near Reagan-esque proportions. So this gentleman said, quote, he and his inner circle, they refused to believe the polls. They refused to believe he was unpopular. They refused to acknowledge until very late that anyone could be upset about inflation. And they just kept telling us that his presidency was historic, that it was the greatest economy ever. We just heard him say that it's the greatest economy ever. Clearly, 70 to 80% of the voters don't believe that. They don't believe that about their own personal financial situation, but they just keep telling us that. Favreau continued by saying, and then after the debate, the Biden told us that the Biden people told us that the polls were fine and Biden was still the strongest candidate. They were privately telling reporters at the time that Kamala Harris couldn't win. So they were shivving Kamala Harris to reporters while they told everyone else not a time for an open process. And his vice president can't win, so he's the strongest candidate. Then we find out when the Biden campaign becomes the Harris campaign that the Biden campaign's own internal polling at the time when they were telling us he was the strongest candidate showed that Donald Trump was going to win 400 electoral votes. That's what their own internal polling said. Yeah. Let's just say that this is a good reason as to why I'm just going to say this. All of these theories about how Joe Biden is going to step aside to allow her to step forward and be president for like 2 days or 2 months or whatever it is, and give her the opportunity to become the first woman president, and of course screw Donald Trump out of the whole 47 thing, and all of that crap. Yeah. Do you honestly believe? And this is a serious question. Do you honestly believe that the Biden camp, now that we know that she frickin' failed, that I should say Jill Biden, or even the rest of the Biden family, do you honestly believe that he'll step aside just for the hell of it, just to give her? No, he's not going to do it. He hates her. He is not going to give her the satisfaction. In fact, he's probably sitting there telling all of those people, I was right. You shouldn't have put her out there. You shouldn't have kicked me to the curb. And I'm sure that he's just sitting there and, I'm positive that that's not going to happen. The other thing that they keep floating out there, which, again, I'm kind of like, I doubt that's going to happen. They keep floating this idea that they want Sotomayor to step down in the next 2 months now. They want Sotomayor to retire immediately and for Biden to nominate Kamala Harris to the Supreme Court. Now, I mean, honestly, here's the thing. I don't know what they gain other than a few years, because Sotomayor is 70, Kamala Harris is 60. And that's assuming that they can even get her through the confirmation process in that 2 months. Because keep in mind, there's no way that they can destroy the filibuster, because they would have to have a filibuster-proof majority in order to be able to kill the filibuster. So none of that's happening. Sotomayor herself has already said, I'm not stepping down. So none of this shit is really working. And these leftists just can't accept the fact that they lost. It's time to move on, accept the fact that you've been defeated, and accept the fact that we now have full control of the three parts that are needed for the legislative and the executive branches to actually get shit done. Okay, constitutionally get shit done. Anyway, so yeah. In fact, it's getting so bad. Honestly, it's getting so bad for the Democrats that now they have their psychologists, psychiatric folks, whatever, that are all telling them how to deal, because apparently they never learned how to deal. How to deal with your Trump supporting, or better yet, Trump voting family members for the holidays. And just really quick, Mark over on Facebook says she's not a judge. To be honest with you, there is no requirements to become a Supreme Court justice in the Constitution. You don't even have to be a lawyer, to be realistic. There's nothing in the Constitution, and this is part of the reason why Article 3 was the shortest and most unfleshed out in it, as far as being able to be appointed to the Supreme Court. There's nothing in it that basically says that you have to be a lawyer or even a judge for either one. Now, whether or not the Senate will confirm you or not being one, that's entirely up to debate. But the fact of the matter is, there is no requirement for that. Because of the fact that the Supreme Court actually operates a little bit differently than the rest of the court systems. Yeah. Not to mention the fact that actually being a judge, you don't necessarily, I don't know, unless it's like, unless you're a state judge or something like that. But I'm not even aware, I'm going to have to look that up, because I'm not even aware of any requirements where a judge actually has to be like a lawyer or whatever before they're elected. I mean, it's usually a nonpartisan position, but you get elected into it. So, yeah, I don't know if that, I don't even know. I mean, most people would kind of look at that and be like, oh yeah, it is, you know, you're not a judge or you're not a lawyer, so how could you be a judge? Well, anyway, so yeah, but back on my point here in Breitbart. Oh God, this is horrible. A Yale psychologist urges MSNBC viewers to shun Trump voting family over the holidays. Yeah. Okay, the party of inclusion, love, tolerance, peace. Yeah, they're basically saying, I'm not even going to hang out. Now, I saw a TikTok where this woman was saying, yeah, I've been invited to my Trump family, you know, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, my Trump family Thanksgiving, and I'm not going. I'm going to be here with my dogs and blah, blah, blah. It's like, really? So anyway, this Yale University chief psychiatry resident, Dr. Amanda Calhoun, said on Friday's MSNBC, The Readout. Okay, this makes sense. Joy Reid had her on. That makes sense. Anyway, said that liberals who were devastated by Donald Trump's presidential reelection should separate from family members who voted for him. Again, I've pointed this out to multiple people who have been complaining on the socials. Oh, Ellie Mistel, you remember him? He's like, he's sitting there talking about how apparently, you know, his wife, he posted something on X where his wife was trying to keep his kids quiet. And he's like, no, let him be loud because apparently nobody listens to me anyway. And I responded back to him and I said, so when are you leaving? When are you going to go? All these people sit here and they they talk about, oh my gosh, this country is I'm so disappointed in this country. It's no longer the country of my values. Hey, there's the door. Go. I'll hold it open for you. You can just go ahead and leave. If you're really that disappointed in America, get out. Don't come back. Believe me, the rest of us, the majority of us, will probably be pretty happy. And to be honest with you, in considering, your friendly family members, and I use friendly in quotes there, and, air quotes, friendly family members, you know what? It's probably going to be a pretty quiet Thanksgiving without you there. Or even a quiet Christmas without you there. Because let's face it, I've never met at this point in my life, and I've been around a long places, okay? I've never, ever met a person who voted Republican and votes Republican who has been so mad, so angry, and so downright evil as to call you names and everything else just because you don't politically align with their scenarios. Okay. I still have yet to see, most of the time, and I got to tell you, living where I do is basically, it's like, folks, I live in what would be considered liberal commie land. And I have several people who are liberal leftists. They know that I'm a conservative. It's not like I hide it, but they know that I'm a conservative. And I'm like, you know what? Whatever. You chose yours. You chose yours. I chose mine. And that's just the way it works. You guys lost, whatever. Here in Washington, nothing moved. We ended up getting an even more leftist governor than what we had before. Inslee left and we got Ferguson, who is even worse, or going to be even worse. But anyway, it's just, it's like, come on, people. There's more to life than just politics. I know I talk about it a lot on this show, but there's more to life than that. There's much more to life than that, especially in personal lives. And to sit here and just shun your family members just because they happen to vote for Trump, when in the next 2 years at least, and possibly the next 4 years, you're going to be enjoying the fact that Trump come back into the House? Yeah. Anyway, these people, they're just crazy. They're totally freaking crazy. They're nuts. They're nuts. Oh yeah, here in Red State, and I got to play you this video because this is hilarious. What's hilarious about it is not so much the proposal, but what's hilarious about it is the fact that the CNN panelists, the other CNN panelists, are like, they're just dry. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. So here, let's go and take a look at this. This is just funny. I'm sorry. This is just hilarious. Take a listen.
Is looking for. That is my question. I'll start with you.
Joe Biden has been a phenomenal president. He's lived up to so many of the promises he's made. There's one promise left that he could fulfill, being a transitional figure. He could resign the presidency in the next 30 days, make Kamala Harris the president of the United States.
Whoa.
It would absolve her from being able to, from having to oversee the January 6th transition, right, of her own defeat. And it would make sure that it would dominate the news at a point where Democrats have to learn drama and transparency and doing things that the public want to see is the time. This is the moment for us to change the entire perspective of how Democrats
operate. This has
operate.
now jumped from an internet meme to a Sunday morning show.
Jamal's out here right now.
Congratulations.
Season of House of Cards.
I thought you were going to say, what about the Supreme Court? That's also out there.
Well, the Supreme Court might happen. I don't know if it will, but I think this is something that's
So again, he floated that, and even they were just like, oh, wow. So, yeah. Even some of their own Democrat friends are like, yeah, you're crazy. So, a little bit later on, let's see. What was it? Where did he say? Scott Jennings said something, which, where did it go? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So he just let out a whoa on it. But anyway, it's like, yeah, these people are just nuts. They're just crazy. That's just all it comes down to. They're nuts. Also, too, the Wall Street Journal, by the way, is talking about what the Dems are trying to do in Pennsylvania. So here in Town Hall, because the Wall Street Journal is behind a paywall, but here in Town Hall, they even admit the race is over. Republican Dave McCormick ousted Democrat incumbent Senator Bob Casey. It's over. McCormick is the senator-elect, should be invited to the Senate's orientation, yet Casey and lawyer Mark Elias are trying to steal the election. That's not hyperbole. That's straight from the Wall Street Journal, which scorched the duo for engaging in black tar heroin version of election denialism. So here's what it is. The Associated Press, this is from the Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press and most other media have called the Senate race for Pennsylvania for Republican Dave McCormick. But never fear, Democrats, lawyer Mark Elias is on the case trying to steal the seat for incumbent Bob Casey. Did someone say election denial? Now, here's the problem. Mr. Casey has refused to concede, despite trailing some 40,000 votes as they were writing that article, which it's probably even more so now. But anyway, Mr. Elias has declared on X that the race isn't over. The specialist who excavates controversial ballots for Democrats is at it again. So here's the problem with a lot of these people, and even the ones that are sitting here hoping that Kamala Harris will actually win the popular vote. Statistics show, all right, that when a trend is going on. So again, that 60-40 split that I was telling you about, on Saturday, that 60-40 split generally will continue no matter what kind of groups you actually grab. It might shift a little bit one way or the other, but in general, that same kind of split will typically bear out regardless of what group of balloting that you might actually be looking into. Okay. Well, that's essentially the situation here. So the state on Sunday had apparently 87,000 provisional ballots to count. Provisional means that the ballots are in question for one kind of legal reason or another, not following proper mail ballot procedures, perhaps a question about a voter registration, maybe a signature problem. But anyway, Mr. Casey is claiming that those 87,000 provisional ballots he could still overcome Mr. McCormick's lead. Well, the reason why that's unlikely is that about 30,000 of those are outstanding from Casey strongholds, Philadelphia and Allegheny counties, Philadelphia and Allegheny County. The others come from the rest of the state where McCormick did better. So, Casey has won only about 7,700 of the provisional ballots counted so far by about a margin of 54 to 46. If that margin prevails for the rest of the provisional ballot counting, there's no way that Casey can win. So again, all of this comes down to the math. This is absolutely crazy that these people, I mean, he would have to win 100%, which is what happened in 2020. He would have to win 100% of any given batch of ballots that come in. That is statistically improbable, given the mathematical and statistical, truisms that go that, generally speaking, once you have some sort of a defined line and split, it's not going to just magically disappear and change. This is part of the reason why a lot of people were so distraught over 2020, because in 2020 at like 4 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden they got ballot dumps that were 100% for Biden and 0 for Trump, even when they were running at a 70-30 split or an 80-20 split. It is not possible for that to happen. So anyway, we'll just have to hang in, folks, hang in for the ride, because this is potentially going to become another lawsuit and so on and so forth situation. Well, speaking of lawsuits, there's one that is still going on, people, that is proving without a shadow of a doubt that the Biden administration participated in and even instigated censorship back in 2020 and 2021 on conservatives and truth tellers in particular. Now, I know that we've kind of gotten wrapped up in the whole election thing, and we've gotten, wrapped up in all of these things that are running around about the election. But we also still have, this wonderful case that was brought by the states of Missouri and Louisiana against the Biden administration and the government for social media censorship. Now, keep in mind that what Trump has already basically said that one of the first things that he's going to do getting into office is that he will issue an executive order that essentially keeps government organizations and agencies from participating in this kind of activity. Okay. However, that being said, the judge in the case, because remember, there was a part of the case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sided with the plaintiffs and kicked it back to the lower courts. So now we're back to the lower court, and the lower court is now agreed to expand the Missouri v. Biden discovery in order to allow more evidence to be introduced. That's right. So this here in the Federalist, a federal judge agreed to expand Missouri v. Biden to procure more evidence federal officials violated Americans' free speech rights. More internal government communications will soon be revealed in a high-profile censorship case that has already hit the Supreme Court thanks to a Friday court ruling in Missouri v. Biden. The historic free speech case uncovered that federal officials, all the way up to President Joe Biden, pressured social media companies to remove specific posts and discussion terms, systemically slanting society in favor of Democrats by controlling public discussions. So the Supreme Court ruled in June that the plaintiffs didn't meet the higher legal standard for a preliminary injunction against the government officials to keep them from doing it. Okay. As the case moved forward. So they said, okay, we're not stopping the government from doing its actions while this case is going on. So the case went back down to the Louisiana District Court, and the judge in the case, Terry Doherty, on Friday allowed the plaintiffs to obtain more public records, which they say will help establish the federal officials specifically targeted their speech on social media monopolies such as Facebook, Google, and X. So this thing is still going. And believe me, they're going to keep digging on this. Now, Doty wrote, because we find the plaintiffs have demonstrated the necessity of jurisdictional discovery, and because their proposed discovery does not appear to be a jurisdictional fishing expedition, plaintiffs shall have the opportunity to conduct such discovery. Now, this was ruled on November 8th. So they're going to get a chance to essentially put in more FOIA requests and more discovery requests to the federal government in order to gather more evidence against the federal government. So I think that once this case is completely adjudicated, I honestly believe that people are going to have their eyes completely wide open to understand how deep the corruption and the anti-Americanism that is part of the federal government goes. Seriously, I really think so. Now, that being said, I've heard, although I've not had it really 100% confirmed, but I've heard that Donald Trump is actually looking at moving over 100,000 federal office positions out of D.C., like he did with, the agency escapes me, but he moved an agency into Colorado. And so it's just... I mean, it's amazing. All of this stuff is going to come out, and I think the Democrats are going to be, well, they won't care because they look in the mirrors and they don't really give a shit. But anyway, so one last thing really quick about that FEMA director. Oh yes, thank you, Land Management, Bureau of Land Management. See, I told you, I've got the smartest audience in the ethosphere. That's from Nana of JJS Land Management. No, sorry, Joan Lewis Adams says on Facebook he's going to move the Capitol. He can't. The Capitol is constitutionally defined as a 10 square mile area that is known as the district, and they already set it up. Although, actually, you know, come to think about it, it doesn't actually define where the 10 square mile area is. That's just where they picked. So theoretically, you're right. You're possibly right. He could potentially move the Capitol. That would be interesting for him to even try. Although I think that Congress would have a say in all that because they're the ones that actually set up that 10 square mile area. So, but I don't think he would be able to do it. It would have to be Congress. But since we have both houses of Congress, okay, we could go with that. But anyway, so remember that FEMA director that was saying don't go to Trump houses in the wake of Hurricane Milton? Well, apparently, and the Daily Wire actually broke that story. Okay, the Daily Wire broke that story. But that being said, the Oversight Committee has now decided that they are going to, they've asked for that FEMA administrator, Deanne Criswell, to appear before the committee on November 19th. And so she's going to Congress to essentially answer questions about it. So yeah, we're just going to have to kind of see where that goes. But this is the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability announced on Saturday that it would be holding a hearing to investigate FEMA after the Daily Wire itself reported that a federal employee ordered relief workers in Florida to skip the homes of people with signs or flags supporting Donald Trump. I talked to you about this on Saturday. And so now, yeah. So now it's like, they're going to start looking into this, and that'll be, on November 19th is when that's supposed to be coming. Okay. So first of all, Nana of JJS said she should be fired. She actually already has been. She's been fired. And also Joan Lewis Adams over on Facebook. He got the capital of Israel moved to Jerusalem. No, it wasn't the capital of Israel. It was our embassy. So yeah, our embassy was moved to Jerusalem, when it hadn't been before. But that being said, going back to the FEMA person talking about this, she apparently is now speaking publicly and saying that she is a scapegoat on this whole thing. So Marnie Washington says that she's a patsy and that FEMA made her a scapegoat. Washington told the Washington Examiner that not only did she and her teams canvass houses with Trump signage, we've registered and provided resources to Trump supporters. The language in the leaked screenshot was shorthand, according to her. She explained the full context that Washington let her supervisors know specific streets we could not do because of hostile political encounters. And according to communications obtained by the Washington Examiner, she was encouraged and supported in her decision to avoid certain streets to keep the team safe. Now, let's be honest. Do you really think that anybody is going to be sitting there and definitely they were going to say stuff to FEMA for sure, because FEMA was only providing, I think, $750 immediately of assistance. And that was going to go nowhere. But yeah, anyway, the point being is this is going to be very, very interesting as this stuff kind of goes along with all of this. Lots of stuff going on, and it's just gonna get get better or worse, depending upon which way you want to look at it, as we head into Inauguration Day on January 20th. And in fact, there's another thing that's floating around, spurred on by Elizabeth Warren, saying that Trump hasn't signed some executive ethics clause or whatever. And first of all, the transition hasn't happened yet. He doesn't necessarily, and by the way, there have been people out there who are saying that he actually signed the law that created this thing. Okay, so he's obviously very aware of it. I honestly don't think that he would, miss that if it's some kind of legal requirement. I can't see where it's a legal requirement because, again, it's not in the Constitution. So I don't see where it would be a 100% binding legal requirement if somebody really wanted to challenge it. But apparently they're all claiming that he has broken the law by not signing this agreement. My guess is that they are misinterpreting that law. I may have to dig into that and see exactly what law they're talking about and try to knock some of that crap out with the truth and facts. All right, folks, that is it for me this evening. Happy Monday. We will see you tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you do, make sure you sign in. And then, of course, search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified when I go live. Also, too, before you take off, don't forget to hit all of those thumbs up and like buttons across the board, whether it is Facebook, YouTube, X, and Rumble all itself. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody. Happy Veterans Day to all of the veterans who are out there. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.